Welcome to another segment of biology videos, and this time we continue in our genetics, but we are going to focus on sex determination in humans. In other words, how is sex determined in humans? A few key concepts that you need to remember. You need to realize that sex is actually determined by what we call as being sex chromosomes. So we can say that sex is determined by sex chromosomes. So in human beings, sex is actually determined by what we call as being sex chromosomes. So the sex chromosomes in human beings are the X and the Y chromosome. So the sex chromosomes, or here we didn't write properly, the sex chromosomes. So the sex chromosomes, in human beings are the X and Y chromosome. So these are the sex chromosomes that we have in human beings. And what is notable is that when you find this type of genotype in males, we have what we call as being the XY. So when you find this genotype, it actually indicates male. But when you find this type of genotype, XX, it actually indicates what we are calling as being, the female. So now, what exactly helps in sex determining? Which chromosome can we say is the sex determining? Well, we can simply say that the Y chromosome is the sex determining. So it's the sex determining chromosome. You are going to understand why I'm saying that the Y chromosome is the sex determining chromosome. Why? Because the presence of the Y chromosome indicates, we can maybe say the presence of the Y chromosome. So the presence of the Y chromosome indicates a male offspring. So you're going to find that if the Y chromosome is present, then that actually indicates a male offspring who is going to have XY. Then the absence, we can simply say the absence. So the absence of the Y chromosome, So if the Y chromosome is absent, then it indicates female. So the absence of the Y chromosome indicates a female. That's what it simply means. So you can see that indeed the Y chromosome is the determining chromosome. So it is actually the sex determining chromosome, which is going to tell whether a child is actually male or female, as you are going to see in my simple genetic diagrams that we are going to have. Now we can use what we call a pedigree diagram, a full genetic diagram. So when it comes to genetic diagram, you are going to find that oftentimes we are going to be using what we simply call as being, a pedigree, diagram. But sometimes in some books you're going to find that they may be using what they simply call as being the Punnett square. But of course we are going to focus on that. Let me show you an example to determine the inheritance of sex in humans, then we make a conclusion as well. So I have a question already here. It says, using a genetic diagram, show that there are equal chances of a couple having a boy or a girl during each pregnancy. So we want to show that there are equal chances of a couple having either a boy or a girl during each pregnancy. It doesn't matter whether it is a 5th pregnancy, there will always be equal chances. Let's try to show that. So remember, we can start with the P1 generation. We again start, what is the phenotype, the physical appearance? I can say, a male, in this case crossing with a female, or if you wanted, you could have said, a father crossing with a mother. That's okay. That's the phenotype, the physical appearance. You go to what we are now calling as being the genotype. So what is the genotype there? So for the genotype of a male, remember, a male contains the X and Y chromosome. A female contains only the X and the X chromosome, in what we are calling as being the genotype. So now when meiosis takes place, it is going to result in the formation of gametes or sex cells. So these will separate. You are going to have X and you are going to have the Y chromosome. These will separate. You are going to have X and another X chromosome. I love to circle them to show that they have actually separated. So random fertilization will take place. So this one will pair with this one. Again, this one will pair with the last one. So please space them out nicely so that they are not at the same point. I'll use a different marker so that you are able to see what I'm doing. This one will pair with that one. Again, this one with the last one. So that is what is going to be happening there. So now random fertilization will take place, resulting in the production of the children, which we are calling, because that's the P1, so this will be the F1. So we can talk about what is inside of the genes of the children, the genotype. So that would be X and X. So you're going to have X. That would be X and X. That's what we mean. That is going to be Y and X. But please be careful. Don't start with Y. Remember, we always write starting with X. So it will be X, Y. Even that one, it is going to be X, then Y chromosome. So what would be, in this case, the phenotype? What would be the phenotype? You can see that, these two are actually girls. So there are 2 girls that you are able to see there. And these are indicating that there are 2 boys that you have there. So that is what we are talking about. If they talked about the phenotypic ratio, the ratio would have been 1 to 1. Remember, 2 there, 1, 2 there, 1. So the ratio would have actually been 1 to 1. So from this question, it is possible for us to know what is the probability of them having a girl child and what is the probability of them having a boy child. So the probability of girls, how many girls were produced? There were 2 over the total number of children. There were 4. Then you multiply this by 100%. So when you multiply by 100%, when you reduce that, this will give you 50%, because 2 there, 1, 2 there, 2 into 100 will give you 50. What about the probability of them having a boy? Well, it simply means, again, it will be 2 over 4 multiplied by 100%. So that will give us 50%. So you can see that during each time that a woman becomes pregnant, there are always equal chances that the child born can either be a girl or a boy. There's nothing that will change. The probability to always be the same. And if you notice here, it is a man that actually determines the gender of a child. So here, this is what we have in what we are calling as being the what we have in our body cells. So there are 46 chromosomes, but when meiosis takes place, there are going to be 23 and 23 chromosomes, which we call a haploid number. Even so these are the sperms. So half of the sperms who have the X chromosome, half of the sperms will have the Y chromosome. But for a woman, 23 that will divide, all of them are going to be X chromosome. So you can see that when this and that combine, it is going to result in 246 chromosomes. And you can see that because in a male, when there's a presence of the Y chromosome, it indicates that the child is actually a male. So indeed, a man is actually the determinant of sex. So there are some men that say, no, me, you give me girls. It is actually a man that actually helps to determine the gender of a child. Why? Because he has the Y chromosome. Females will always produce the X chromosome. Well, this is the end of the video. Look forward to another one where we highlight some other concept.